This is Joshua Hart from JTH Boxing, and today I'm joined by the one and only Jamie Moore. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, mate. You?
I'm not too bad. I've definitely not had better days than this one. So honestly, listen, let's just get straight into this because I'm buzzing for this one. Uh,
Let's
so
do it.
let's start off. Liverpool at the weekend. You had a Kid Fiaz out, and he secured his first professional stoppage. What was
Yeah.
what was the plan going into that fight? What did you go over in training camp to prepare for that fight?
Well, I think if you look at Akib's career, sort of since he's turned pro, we've matched him a lot stiffer than your average sort of prospect coming through would be matched. We've given him some pretty stern tests, um, certainly in the first sort of 8, 9 fights. So in his 11th fight there, Dean Dodge's no sort of walk in the park. But we knew because of the tests he'd had in the past that he was more than capable of not repeating it, but looking good doing it. And that kid punches, he hasn't had any stoppages because we've matched him tougher than usual. And I do think the ref could have stopped it a little bit earlier than he did the other night. But nevertheless, he's got his first stoppage, and I think that'll boost his confidence. But more than anything, his performance overall was fantastic. He boxed so well. His timing was brilliant. Um, his decision making in terms of going from boxing on the back foot into his attacking style and getting on the inside, he's getting much better. So, sometimes in the past he's been a little bit hesitant in doing it, and he sort of gets stuck in between styles. But on Saturday, he just seemed to flow so well in between the two styles. So he's really coming into his own now, and for someone who boxes on the back foot, he's really exciting to watch. And now, if he can start getting fighters out of there as well, and building on the stoppage win from last Saturday, then there'll be no stopping him.
So obviously that was his first stoppage. I'm sure that's going to fill his confidence massively. What's like the plan moving forward with him for the rest of the year? Is there like a set plan, or is it
Yeah,
just take
well,
every fight?
he's had that. That was his. I think it was his fifth 8 rounder in 11 fights. So we've moved him quite quickly. And I think he's got one more 8 rounder on his contract, but I'm not sure whether he needs to do that now. I think he could easily go straight into a 10 rounder next time out because, in all honesty, the British super featherweight title is vacant at the moment. And I think by the end of the year, he'll be more than ready to be fighting for it. So I think to make sure he's ready, to get him better prepared for it so that he's not going straight into a 12 rounder for the first time. If we got him a 10 rounder next time, and we could have a training camp as if he's doing a 12 rounder, then that wouldn't be the first time he'd done it. And then by the end of the year, he'd be ready to be fighting for the British title because, like I say, he's had so much experience under his belt at this point. And, outside of the ring, he's also got a lot of world class sparring with Carl Frampton, with Jack Catterall, with Chantal Cameron. So that's just in our gym. He's been lucky to travel around the world. He's been to Vegas with us with Carl. He's been to Dubai a few times on trips. He's been to New York. He's had such a lot of experience under his belt for a young kid. So I'd have no issues with him boxing for the British title by the end of the year.
So obviously also in Liverpool at the weekend, it was finally confirmed after weeks and weeks of
You're giving me
rumours.
nightmares. Keep mentioning Liverpool, because they just turned us over 7-0, man.
I do apologize. I do apologize for that one. But Chantel Cameron versus Katie Taylor was officially announced in Dublin.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't the original planned fight for Dublin, but it's been made as a team, as Chantel Cameron's trainer. What is what? First of all, what were you feeling when she said, "I want Katie Taylor"?
Well, she said it ever since she came to the gym, and you know, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to work out that a female fighter in and around Katie Taylor's division would want a boxer because that's the sort of ultimate goal. The best fighter in your weight division in the world, you want to try and get to the stage where you're challenging them because that's the whole point. That's the whole reason you're in the game. So she's always had that ambition and goal. But I understand because Chantal's always been able to fight, But I understand that she needed to get herself in a position because, from Katie Taylor's point of view, it didn't make sense for her to fight Chantel because the risk reward didn't make sense. Whereas Eddie promised her, you win a world title and get to the stage where you're unified or undisputed, and the fight makes sense, and I'll make the fight. Now I understand Serrano was going to come first because of the first fight, and it was a great fight, and people wanted to see a rematch. But when the fight was going to be postponed, and Katie didn't want that date to be postponed because she didn't want it to affect Croke Park, then it was a no-brainer for me. So as soon as I seen Katie call Chantel out, instantly I knew the fight was going to be made because I knew that Eddie felt like it was the right time to make it. Chantel had earned her stripes and was ready for it. And once Katie sort of mentioned Chantel's name, which you've got to give a huge credit for, because Carl Frampton made a great point. He said Katie could have fought me mum and sold that arena out, and he's right. So for not only to pick a tough challenge, but probably the toughest challenge out there for her, for a homecoming, takes a huge amount. She needs a huge amount of credit for that. And obviously, from my point of view, I was over the moon for the fact that Chantel gets the biggest fight out there for her.
Obviously, so I was out at a show in Leicester at the weekend, and when we saw it was announced, I turned to a couple lads and said, "Have you seen Katie Taylor versus Chantel Cameron?" And one lad turned to me and said instantly, "Chantel Cameron will be too much for her." Now I'm very well aware that you're going to have full confidence in Chantel Cameron to beat her. So what's the next steps? How are you going to prepare for this fight on May 20th?
Listen, I'm very confident in Chantel winning the fight, but I'm very confident in Chantel winning every fight because I've got so much confidence in her. I see what she does day in, day out in the gym. I'm also a realist, and I'm very, very aware of how good Katie Taylor is and how good Chantel's going to have to be on the night to beat her. So without any stretch of the imagination, there's no way I'm underestimating this fight at all. And I'm certain, I know Chantel certainly isn't. She was sat on that couch about an hour ago with me, going through videos of Katie, sort of doing homework and just doing the initial sort of breakdown and the tactics. And as good as Chantel is, and as good as Katie is, a fight like this, I believe, gets won on the night when either fighter gets the decision making right. And there will certainly be points in the fight where Chantel won't get it right every time, and there'll be times when she gets it right, and it's about getting it right more times than you get it wrong, basically, in a fight at this magnitude. And will youth play a part in it a little bit? I think maybe it will. I know Katie's 36, but she's a young 36, and she hasn't took, there's not that many miles on her clock. But Chantel, for me, is coming into a prime. She's not just in terms of physicality, but in terms of experience and in terms of confidence. She just really sort of getting to boiling point now. So it's going to be an amazing occasion, and I honestly believe it's going to be one of the best female fights you'll ever see.
Do you think the crowd will play a part? Because obviously, it's no secret that the Irish fans can be some of the noisiest fans in boxing. Do you think the crowd
Yeah,
will play a part, or do you reckon Chantel's got that mindset and that mentality to just completely block out the crowd?
I think both. I think the crowd will play a part in pushing Katie Taylor and dragging a few, through a few maybe tough rounds. I also think that Chantel's mindset at this moment in time is so strong that she's like she's in a mode where she feels like nobody can beat her, and no matter what he's put in front of her, nothing can stop her, nothing can hold her back. So and that's how you've got to be. You've got to be going into fights what are this big, and there's so many. So you're working with so much small percentages in terms of coming out the winner or the loser. You have to have that absolute firm belief in yourself that you're going to come out victorious. Otherwise, if you don't, then that will be the difference between you winning and losing. So and that only comes with experience, with time in the ring, and sort of assessing yourself over the years, accepting your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities, and then knowing how to cover them up and mask them, and then making sure that you can exploit other people's weaknesses.
Obviously, this isn't the first time one of your fighters has took a fight on away soil. Jack Catterall last year stepped up and fought Josh Taylor in what was honestly one of the best performances I've ever seen. And obviously, he got robbed by the judges. It was one of the worst robberies we saw. People still don't understand how Josh Taylor won. Is there that fear again? Obviously, it wasn't a fear last time round going into the Josh Taylor fight with Jack, but is there that fear this time that the judges might just be on Katie's side?
Listen, you can always have that danger anywhere you go. It doesn't matter. It can happen at home. I was at Michael Brody's world title fight against Willie Horan in Manchester, and he got ripped off. He should have been a world champion that night at super bantamweight and didn't get it. So it doesn't just happen at the home fighters on in their hometown. It's not just doesn't just always go one way. Sometimes it goes the other way as well. It can happen at any time. You really can't take any of that into consideration when you're getting your fighter prepared for a fight like this, or any fight, as a matter of fact, because you can only control the controllables. Stuff what's out of your hands and what's not in your control, you can't worry about, because it then has an impact on the way you train your fighter, or the way you go about your job. And, as much as it's not easy to do that because of experiences in the past. You've got to be professional about it, and you've just got to push it to one side, put it to the back of your mind. You've got to be strong-minded, and you've got to have faith in people being there to do their job. So the way I say to the fighters is, listen, do your job. I'll do my job to the best of our ability, and we'll go in there and put a performance in on the night, and hopefully the people who are supposed to do their job properly as well.
So obviously moving on from Chantel Cameron versus Katie Taylor, I want to talk about Jack Catterall. Obviously, we've not seen him in the ring since that night back in Scotland last year. Obviously, he was meant to be out on March 25th on the Okoli versus Light card, but I'm guessing there's some other plan. Could you give us any sort of idea of when we can next see Jack Catterall?
Yeah, well, it's been a frustrating time, obviously, since the Taylor fight. Um, we everyone expected the rematch to happen, because Josh wanted the fight to happen, and he said he was going to happen before Christmas. Originally, it was scheduled for November. Obviously, he had to have some time off in between because he'd got married, and then it didn't happen. Then it was pushed back to December. Then it was early this year, and it was so frustrating, as you can imagine, for Jack. And then the fight's not, he's now not scheduled. Taylor's has damaged his foot, and we're in a position where the fight doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. So we have to look elsewhere. And I know Jack's team have been in talks with Regis Prograis to try and maybe get a fight against him over the line, because that's a fantastic fight in its own right. And Josh Taylor, Prograis, Jack Catterall are the best three super lightweights in the world, and either of those three fighting each other is a great fight. We've seen the World Series boxing final with Prograis and Taylor, and you couldn't separate him with a it was just that close a fight. Anybody could have won that fight. So again, it's by no stretch of the imagination is an easy fight for Jack, but again, for the same reason, I'm so confident in Jack's ability to win a fight, as I have with Chantel Cameron. I see what he does day in day out in the gym. I see how dedicated he is. I told everybody before the Taylor fight, listen, you just watch this kid fight. Everyone was asking me, how do I have so much confidence in Jack? He's never really boxed at this level. And I kept saying, just because he's not boxed at this level yet doesn't mean he can. At some point, everybody's got to step up and prove the point, and you'll see his performance will be proof in the pudding, and he proved it. So yeah, hopefully, if we can get this fight over the line with Prograis, then then I believe that Jack will become rightfully a world champion that he should have been for the last 12 months.
Do you think well, if obviously Catterall versus Taylor 2 gets made, do you reckon it's now a fight which is more to settle a beef rather than for the belts? Because obviously Josh doesn't have all the belts anymore. Do you think it's
Yeah,
now just a fight just for Jack to right the wrongs that weren't even wrong, if that makes sense?
yeah, I know what you mean. I think, well, listen, people have differences of opinion. Let's say that, and the vast majority of people who've seen the fight thought Jack won. Um, Josh has maintained ever since that he thought he won the fight, and a lot of people have sort of turned against him because of that. So it just creates a storyline for me. From me personally, anyway, there's never, even when I was boxing, there was never any animosity in terms of proper hatred or anything like that against an opponent. It was a competitiveness in me what I had, and I don't have any ill feelings towards Josh Taylor at all. At the end of the day, to me, it's just a boxing match, and I'm training a guy who's going to go against him, hopefully again, um, and may the best man win. So I just think that that the fact that we all thought Jack won the fight, and the fact that Josh is still a world champion makes it more intriguing for me if they do rematch again. Because for argument's sake, if Jack can get the Prograis fight and if he can beat Prograis, then for me it makes the rematch with Taylor even bigger than it would have done if it had took place in November straight away. So, so I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, and for whatever reason, the rematch hasn't took place yet. Um, do I believe it will take place eventually? Yes, I do. But when, I really don't know.
So obviously moving on to fights that we think will take place, but we're not sure when. Fury versus Usyk, obviously it's been taken over social media. It's been taken over all the headlines for the last couple of weeks. Do you think the April 29th date is too soon to make a fight of that magnitude, or do you think it is completely reasonable to make that fight?
It's tough. It is tough. It's really touch and go. In terms of timing wise, the only thing I think is maybe they're a little bit closer to it than they're giving out. Maybe they're letting on. Um, and Fury is renowned for being able to sell himself. Sometimes, or most of the time, not in a conventional way. And I think that's what's happening now. I've got a feeling maybe the contracts are signed, and they both know what they're doing. They're putting the videos out there to make out that they're not, and that they're going back and forward with each other. They're actually really making me laugh. The videos, the name calling and stuff like that. It is quite funny. Um, so you know, looking at it, if what they're saying is true, then do I think 6 weeks is a little bit too short notice? Yes, but I've got a feeling if it's not signed, they've both been training like it has been signed, and they're just going through some little details, or it is actually signed and they're just playing as at it.
That's the thing. I was talking to other people. A lot of people think, in terms of selling the fight, you could announce it, the week before April 29th, and it would still sell out Wembley. What the main talking point is it enough time for them to train? Because Fury, I've said only the other day, it was his first day of camp, which a lot of people think is
I don't
bollocks.
believe that. Yeah, I don't believe that. Someone like Tyson and Usyk, they'd be having 10, 12 weeks. And if these guys have been in talks for a fight, like I say, for April 29th, then they will have been training just in case it happens anyway. So it won't be like they've only just started training camp. And yeah, I think if I was a betting man, I'd be betting that Tyson Fury's playing as at it, and he's known how long it's going to be April 29th.
So moving on, one thing I want to quickly touch on. Obviously, another man who's been taking over the headlines since October now. Conor Ben, obviously the failed drug test situation. He's not been doing himself the most favors. Okay, they've got 10 minutes left. That's just popped up. So also we'll touch on that quickly. Um, as a trainer, as a coach, what's your like thoughts on the way he's handled himself? Like, if you were Conor Ben's coach, how would you be feeling?
Well, you know, in terms of what he's saying about how he's handled himself, it's very, very confusing because there's so many different things being said, or not being said in certain circumstances. There's a 240-page dossier, what no one's allowed to see. Um, I'm going to prove me innocent, and I've got the evidence to prove it, but no one ever sees it. Um, and then, on the flip side of that, I've not seen this Piers Morgan interview, but I've been told that in it, he says that the sample what he's failed on, he passed. It was clear the first three times someone tested it, but tested it the fourth time and he failed it. Now, if that's true, and I don't know if it is, but if it's true, then you've got to ask the question: why is it tested more than once? Because a sample is tested once, and it's either positive or negative. And if it's negative, then it's tested again with a B sample. But if you pass it the first time, it would never be tested again. So, so there's a lot of stuff going on and questions what need answering, and dependent on the answer to the questions depends on sort of which direction that we're going. But it's such a confusing situation, and I've said it a loads of times. I've mentioned this in interviews about this before. I was a huge Conor Ben fan, and I would still say I am as long as he's cleared, if his name's cleared. But if if the facts are that he failed two separate tests, and everything's above board, then he's cheated, and he needs to heed the punishment for whatever those failures are. But it seems like there's that many questions about it. We never really getting to the bottom of the truth of the matter.
Well, Jamie, I think that's all we've got time for. Honestly, I massively appreciate you coming on tonight. Big thank you for coming, and I'll certainly be
No,
speaking
yeah,
to you soon. So thank you for coming on tonight.
yeah,
Cheers.
no
Thank
worries.
you.
Listen, give us a shout. We'll get you some press passes there. We'll get in the backstage.
I'll definitely be getting in touch. Definitely. Cheers. Thank you.
Good. All right, pal.